What's up guys, welcome back to another episode. Thank you for watching. I'm Robert from StudioRSR, and today we've got a very unique build. It's a BMW 640i GT. So the very cool thing about this car is that it's got the first gen B58, but stay tuned and we'll explain to you why this build was a bit of a challenge. Alright guys, so before I go over why this build was a bit of a challenge, I want to show you guys all the stuff that we put into it. So as you can see, whenever you pop the engine bay on some of these B58, the first thing you'll probably notice is the CSF billet aluminum intake manifold. So this car came to us just as CSF was releasing the first gen B58 manifold, and this is the first car that we installed it on. And the reason this car needs the CSF intake manifold is obviously you can see this car has port injection, but mainly because it's also running the Dynamic AutoWorks, or DAW, D-A-W, what they're calling the Hypercore upgraded turbo. As you can see here for the port injection system, we have our own port injection kit that is compatible with all the CSF manifolds. A lot of people get confused that if you are looking to upgrade your B58 with port injection, that you need to have the manifold and a port plate, but the cool thing with the manifold is that the port injection is built in. And to control the port injection system, we're using what we've always used, which is Motiv Reflex. So all of these upgrades and mods that we just talked about are very common these days for upgrading your B58. The unique thing on the 640i GT is that some of the components, call them parts bin cars. If you guys are BMW fans, you know that the E36 318 Ti was the first car that was coined a parts bin car. After going through and building this car, I want to start calling this car also a parts bin car. And when I say parts bin car, that means from BMW, in between generations, they kind of combine both parts from the previous generation and newer parts from the current generation. So even though this 640i GT is considered a G02 chassis, I think it's G02 or it could be something else, but it's definitely named a G chassis. It still has a Gen 1 B58, and it has some control modules that are from a Gen 2 and some that are from a Gen 1. And also, besides the control modules, the fuel pump in the tank, the low pressure fuel pump, also had to be redone. So we sent it out, we sent the VIN to Performance Fueling Solutions, and there was a bit of confusion because obviously it shows up as a G chassis, so they sent us a G chassis low pressure fuel pump, but this 640i GT has a F series low pressure fuel pump in it. Besides those things, the really difficult part, and this is where Jake at Motiv Reflex really came in and helped us along with this. The tuning in the car is also technically considered a parts bin. So some of the programming in the various modules are from G series, and some of them are from F series. So when it came down to getting the port injection and reflex system to work along with boot mod, it was very, very hard. So we took a couple weeks trying to figure out why we weren't getting certain signals from the ECU. So we got the reflex to show signals, then it was about getting the actual ECU and showing the signals through the actual ECU tuning from Cary Jordan. So, you know, shout out to Cary Jordan also too for helping support along the way. But the most difficult part was getting the reflex to show all the different parameters that it controls. Even though they were showing up in reflex itself, obviously the reflex communicates with the ECU and then thus controls what it needs to do for the ECU, but the information wasn't getting from the reflex box to the ECU. So basically, without Jake at Motiv writing a completely new program for the reflex box, still be dead in the water. So big shout out to the guys at Motiv for creating a whole new program for this car. But yeah, so we finally confirmed that the car is running great and the logs all check out. So today the owner is going to be picking it up, and let's hear from him on a little bit why he wanted to build this 640i GT to this level. All right guys, so this is Edward. He's here to finally pick up the car. It's been a while, huh?
It has. Couple payments in, but I'm super happy that I'm finally here.
You know, I kind of talked about earlier the challenges with figuring out the reflex and how this car is kind of like a hybrid G series and an F series.
Yes.
But before we get into all that and any questions you have about the build, what made you want to get a 640i?
GT, exactly. So with what you said was kind of hits home for me, because like even when I got the car doing like little tiny things like accessories, it's always, is it a 5 series or is it a 6 series, right? It was always like in the middle. I got this build originally because I actually had a 17 5.0, so I'm kind of used to even a 69 Mustang. I'm kind of used to that side, but I've always wanted a BMW. And then when I went to the dealership to get this one, there was an older M3, and then this one because I was expecting my son to be born.
Oh, okay.
So it was funny because it started off with kind of like a hatch. Yeah. I was like, okay, you know what, to carry this kid around. But I literally didn't hesitate. Maybe like what, couple months in, that's when I called you. I found you referral from one of my friends, and he was like, hey, you know what, you know, this is what you want. And I told him I always wanted to do E85, and I wanted to do basically like I wanted to have this car, but in my head I was like, oh, I just want to have like a little bit more power.
Yeah. So then, you needed because you had a baby, you needed the space, and the size.
Yes.
But then you, in your head, you're like, I need M3 power.
It's because
you just need more performance.
Yeah. It's funny because even having the B58, just driving around town, just with this alone stock, it was already pretty fast to me. But obviously,
this car's heavy, dude.
It's heavy, yeah. A month in, I realized I need more. Yeah.
So I never knew that you only had the car like a month or two since you hit us up. I thought you had it for like a minute.
No, I just did the wrap, and then as soon as the wrap was done, it was like I hit you up.
So if it weren't for all those complications with the the reflex and figuring out the tuning and the whole G series, F series confusion, you know, this build would have taken maybe what, a month and a half, just waiting for parts, core exchanges, and things like that.
So it's like I mentioned before. I told him that this is my first time actually owning a car that relies solely on that kind of fuel, solely on ethanol. So like I'm kind of confused sometimes on like, because one of my friends, even he goes to the gas stations, and sometimes he mentioned to me that he actually tests like the ratio. Yeah. So little stuff like that, and then
for sure,
like the cold start. I know we live in California. I shouldn't have to deal with that at all. Yeah. Because it's not too cold.
But yeah, for E85, it's very simple. So we always recommend everybody to download this app on your phone. It's called E85 Mix. In there, you'll put the fuel tank capacity, what E you're currently at, which right now, I think we're running on full E right now. So you'd set it to 100. You put in all the stuff, and then you hit calculate, and it tells you how much 91 you need to put in and how much E85 you need to
Obviously
put in.
a mix, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So from now on, what would you recommend me to do every time?
So we found on the B58 that it makes the most efficient power and not too much heat at E60.
So
60%.
And then 40.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
One thing I want to make clear too for everybody watching also is that when people say E60, they assume that's 60% of the fuel tank is ethanol, but it's not, because 91 or pump gas already has 10% ethanol in it. So you got to use that calculator app, and that it'll
like a little cheat for you. Like a little cheat, yeah.
Correct.
Cool. Okay, perfect. Yeah.
And then another thing, if you're running a lot of E all the time, we recommend every 3 to 4 tanks, just bite the bullet and run a tank of 91 just to clean out all the E and all.
So you said every like maybe 3 to 4?
3 to 4 fuel tanks.
Boom, now. Yeah. Run a 91.
That's if you're driving it often.
So I won't be too often.
Okay.
Maybe like a weekend.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So if the E sits, if you let it sit for a little bit, you know, E deteriorates much faster than just pump gas. Yeah. If it's sat for more than 3 to 4 weeks, definitely fill it up and get it out of there.
Yeah.
If you're planning to let it sit for a little bit, I'd try to keep the tank as empty as possible.
So for example, like in 1 week I'm flying out to Florida. I'll be out there for maybe a couple weeks. So then essentially, so I just tell my wife, hey, just turn it on, or need to actually
Yeah, I mean a week is not bad.
No, like maybe two to 3.
Yeah, I would just leave it as empty as possible before you leave. Yeah. Okay. And that way, when you get back, you can go straight to the pump and get some fresh E in there.
Okay. Yeah. I'm super anxious about this. I've been waiting. It was funny because I mentioned in the beginning when I came, I was like, I think I need bigger brakes. Yeah. That was the funniest part, and you were like,
the first day you dropped it off, right? Yeah.
Because you were comparing it to your Supra.
Correct.
And you were like, oh no, this is the same. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, all right.
Yeah, so the brakes on the Supra, that's a second gen car. Yeah. So, you know, the brakes on that, I told you, just upgrade pads, right? Let's see how it does with pads first. This car's so heavy, and it's running the same amount of power as some of our Supra builds and B58 builds. Definitely need to do something about the brakes.
Awesome. So that'll be the next step. For me, the only thing left for me on this one, which obviously I'm happy for you guys to help me out with that, which would be just the big brakes, maybe go Brembos. Maybe a couple weeks I'll start looking for other rims from like maybe the G80. Then after that, I guess just transmission.
Yeah, that's the only thing missing on your car.
Yeah.
That was gonna be my next question. So what's next?
It's
you got wheels and transmission.
That's it. Yeah. So for now, yeah.
So yeah, you've literally got everything everything is maxed out before the transmission will slip.
Okay, so can you really quick, can you run through everything you did? I just want to hear a recap of everything.
Well, we took out the low pressure fuel pump because Performance PFS has a core, right? And that was the first G series versus F series confusion. So because this is a G series chassis, they sent us an F series or a G series pump.
Right.
Went to put it in, nothing matched up. So we had to send it back, get an F series one.
Yeah.
And they also had to make some changes with pictures that we showed them and stuff.
Okay.
But that was done, and then the turbo was done, manifold was done, port injection was all in there. Turbo took a little bit too because your car was here in the time that the owner of Dynamic AutoWorks actually reached out to us and said, hey, I made some updated changes to the turbo designs. I don't want to give you the older one. Let me give you the latest update.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, worked out.
You've got that in there.
Also charge pipe, everything, down pipe, everything.
Yeah, all that easy stuff.
Easy, yeah.
Yeah, the biggest mystery, which took 3 people, me, myself, Jake at Motiv, and Cary Jordan. It was 2 things really. First, it was, hey, this is there's stuff that the ECU is not controlling correctly on the actual ECU tuning side. And that was before we were running the port injection, because obviously we want to see how it runs with no port first.
Of course.
And then once we got that going, we tried to turn the port injection on, and then Cary said, hey, boot mod and the ECU are not seeing E85 and some other signals. So then we had to go back and work with Jake at Motiv, and he was able to write a whole new program for the reflex.
That's intense, huh?
We tried all this different wiring.
Yeah.
I think I called you one time and I told you the math. Like, because Jake said, try this wire, and you were like, can't we just try all the wires? And I was like, dude, we did the math because we thought about that too.
Yeah.
And all the different
like the
wiring combinations came
out
to like 1,400 different type of combinations. But that's literally how desperate we all were, because we all were like, what are we gonna do? So
it's funny because I mentioned to you over the phone. I was like, I used to be an electrician. I was like, can't you just do that? And you were like, no, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
I was like, oh shit.
If there were only maybe 3 or 4 wires, but there's a ton. So it was like X amount to whatever power, the power of 3.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm super excited.
Everything else, I think now the last step is just download the boot mod app if you haven't yet.
I have it. Yeah.
You have it already?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just need that that app you told me about, just in case. Obviously, once I get accustomed to like fueling up, knowing exactly
how to do it. Yeah.
And then should I do that? What my friend does? It's curiosity. He actually tested before.
I mean, that's really, really hardcore.
Is that too much?
If once you find a good place, which and always get your E85 at the same spot, it should be pretty consistent.
Okay.
Those guys are like out there to win money races, or they're trying to hit a power number.
Well, I do live literally in front of the Speedway in Irwindale. I literally live right in front, so I'm pretty sure it has to be good, right?
Well, I'm sure your friend, who we both know, he'll tell you if that's a good spotter.
Yeah. Ooh, I'm excited. It's funny because my 5-year-old son, I taught him on camera, like, Daddy, what kind of car does Daddy drive? And he goes, oh, BMW. And then he's like, what? He's been like egging me like every single weekend to come pick up this car. I'm like, it's not ready yet. It's not ready yet. It's not ready yet. And then finally this weekend I'm gonna pick him up. So
nice.
Yeah. So.